Chris Hipkins is with us. Very good morning to you.
Good morning.
Just let me play you this from yesterday. Listen to this.
Not hugely significant.
Now, that was a question about tax. What did you mean by that?
Well, you just have to wait 2 more days, Mike. In the budget, it'll set out exactly what the government is doing. But obviously, I'm not releasing the details of that today.
So there is something to do with tax in the budget?
Look, as I've indicated, I'm just not getting into what is and isn't in the budget.
No. Fair enough. I accept that. Nothing specific. But we can expect some sort of adjustment to taxes in the budget, even if they are insignificant. Is that what you're saying?
No, I wouldn't read too much into that comment, Mike.
Well, you made it. What were you reading into it? What were you meaning when you said it?
Well, you'll see in 48 hours.
So is there any sort of adjustment to tax? Because you previously told me there isn't. And so if there is now, then you seem to have changed your mind. That's all.
Mike, as I said, you'll see that any changes to tax are consistent with the manifesto that we put out at the last election, which is what I've committed to.
That's what I understood the case to be. Your manifesto says there will be no new taxes or change to taxes. Is that correct?
Mike, as I said, what we're doing is consistent with what's in our manifesto.
Well, what's in your manifesto? Tell me what's in your manifesto.
In 48 hours, you'll see exactly what that is. I'm not going to get into the game of telling you what is and isn't in the budget, because there's just 48 hours to run, and then the budget everyone will see what's in the budget. You do realise,
of course, this is our money in our country, and playing games like this isn't that cool?
It's not playing games, Mike. There are very good reasons why the budget gets released all at once, and that has been the case under successive governments, and I'm not going to change it.
A couple of notes from Westpac this morning. They think the cash rate's going to go to 6% now, not 5.5%. Do you think it'll go to 6%?
What we're seeing is inflation is starting to trend down in New Zealand. We saw that in the most recent inflationary figures, and of course the Reserve Bank makes decisions in order to bring inflation back to within its target range of 1 to 3%. We are seeing inflation trending down. You'll see in the Treasury forecast that will be released on budget day when they project that we're going to be back within that 1 to 3% target range. Of course, the Reserve Bank do their own set of projections. They're not always the same as the New Zealand Treasury's projections, so they make their own decisions based on that. But in terms of the government's contribution here, the overall level of government spending as a proportion of the economy is trending down. After that COVID peak where we had things like the wage subsidy and so on that were pushing that up, that's coming back down again. That will have a positive effect on the overall inflationary environment that we're in. So we want to get inflation back to that target range, because that will help to ultimately bring interest rates and costs down again for families.
When you say back down to 1 to 3%, when do you reckon that's going to be?
Well, as I've said, the Treasury forecasts will be released on budget day. And
are they different from the Reserve Bank forecasts?
They often are. I haven't seen, the Reserve Bank obviously make their own forecasts, and I haven't seen what they're thinking in terms of their latest forecasting yet. They'll release that in due course. But they're not always the same. But the Treasury's forecasts are a pretty good guide that government works to.
Do you have any evidence that inflation's actually coming down beyond that one number we've had so far? In other words, yes, it came down slightly. Do you have any evidence to suggest it's continuing to fall, or you just don't know?
You'll see the Treasury forecasts on Thursday.
Yeah, they're a forecast. I'm looking for evidence. I don't see any evidence. All I see is fruit and vegetables through the roof. I see inflation. I see a forecast of a cash rate going up to 6%, not 5.5%. That's all as a direct result of inflation. All I'm asking is, do you see something I don't see?
Well, when the Treasury do their forecast, they don't just pluck the figures out of thin air. They actually do look at evidence. They do look at real-time evidence of what is actually happening.
Well, tell me what that evidence is, because I can't see it. What's the evidence in the economy currently that inflation is continuing to fall beyond the number we already have?
Well, like I said, you'll see that in the Treasury forecasts on Thursday when they are released. I'm not releasing those forecasts on behalf of the Treasury.
But what I'm trying to ascertain is, what are the forecasts based on? They've got to be based on something material. I can't see in the economy something material that is driving inflation down. What do you see?
Well, of course, all of that gets released, and that will be released on Thursday. Those forecasts are put together by the Treasury independently.
I'm not asking the Treasury. I'm asking you. Do you see, Chris, in the economy, as you wander around the country at the moment, what do you see in your economy that's driving inflation down? Because I can't see anything.
We've certainly seen that food prices in particular have been elevated in recent times, and we're still seeing evidence of that when Kiwis go to the supermarket. Petrol prices are up again. So those are two big drivers of cost. If you look at the other big driver of cost in New Zealand, it's building and construction. So particularly building materials, there's an international element to that. And then, of course, there's the nature of the fact that that's a very, very red-hot part of the New Zealand economy.
You're arguing against yourself. You're telling me all the things have gone up. This is what I'm telling you. Everything's going up. I'm asking, what are you seeing that's going down?
Well, there are a number of areas where they're going down. I mean, if you look at the most recent inflationary numbers, the evidence, I know you like evidence, the overall level of inflation's fallen from 7.2 to 6.7. And, that means that the price of some things has gone down.
Like what, Chris? Tell me what it is. I've given you the number. The number is 6.8. That number we all know. What I've asked you very clearly, what's your evidence that things have continued to drop down from that figure? Just something.
Well, if you look within, I haven't memorised those, Mike, but if you look within food prices, for example, there are some areas, fruit and veg, where we're still seeing food prices going up. There are other areas with, canned foods and so on, where food prices have been coming down.
But Chris, overall, the price of food has gone up. Everything's going up and continues to go up. You need it to do exactly the opposite if we're going to bring inflation under control. All I'm asking is give me one single piece of evidence that suggests you've seen something that I can't that's leading to that end.
Well, if you want a breakdown of the inflationary statistics, i.e. the consumer price index, and you want to know which items have gone up and which items have gone down, that's publicly available. I don't have it sitting on my knee in front of me at the moment so that I can go through it in detail for you. But actually, you'll see evidence that some items of food have gone up and some have gone down. It's important to note that one of the big drivers, though, is fruit and veg, and the recent extreme weather has clearly had an impact there as well.
Of course. Westpac are also claiming this morning you're back into the bond market for ever larger amounts of money, 24, 25 and 26 as well as 27. Is that true?
Again, you'll see in the overall debt trajectory, the overall level of government's borrowing and spending will be clearly set out on Thursday. Now, again, that issue around forecasts of that, the Treasury do that based on the government spending decisions. They do that with independence, so that New Zealand is, it's not a political exercise. It's one that the Treasury do, and they release that on Thursday in association with the budget.
Do you worry about the amount of money we owe?
Our debt levels as a country, if you look at the government debt levels, are relatively low compared to other countries. We're lower than Australia, much lower than the UK and the US. Overall, one of the challenges, of course, that I do think about is the level of household debt. That is something that households, I think, are very attuned to, the amount that they're paying on their mortgage, the amount they've got on their credit card, the amount they've got on their overdraft. That is, and that is, a challenging time for families who have that debt at the moment.
And you don't worry about your debt, though, even though it's 40% of GDP?
The government's debt?
Correct.
The government's debt is not 40% of GDP.
Well, if you hadn't changed the numbers, it would be 40% of GDP.
Based on the international comparators, we still have one of the lowest government debt to GDP ratios compared to almost any country that we compare ourselves to. Lower than Australia, lower than the US, lower than the UK, lower than the Eurozone. I think we're in a good position in terms of levels of government debt.
Do you worry about our current account deficit?
Of course, but we've got to recognise that actually one of the things that's really affected the current account deficit is COVID-19. The current account deficit clearly has been exacerbated by the lack of tourism in recent times. So some of those things will start to improve for New Zealand.
Given that everybody had COVID, why is our current account deficit the worst in the world?
Well, because we didn't have a whole lot of tourists.
But then again, nor did anybody.
Tourists bring a lot of money into the New Zealand economy, and that helps to offset the money that flows out of the economy. When that money stops flowing, it has an impact on our current account deficit. It means that we end up spending more than we earn at a much greater rate because we don't have the money flowing in for tourists. It's clearly had a significant impact on our current account deficit.
When will our current account deficit get better?
New Zealand has had a current account deficit challenge for a long time.
No, but you're in charge now. When will it get better?
Well, it's one of the reasons that we've got to look at diversifying our economy and extracting better value from our exports. So we've got to move from volume to value. It's one of the reasons we've got to focus on the skilled economy. So making sure that we've got the sort of skills here in New Zealand, that innovations that
you've had 6 years on this. When will it get better?
Thrive, and we've got a lot of work happening in all of those areas. So if you look at the investments we're making, say in skilled workers, for example, the apprenticeship boost, those sorts of things actually help the overall state of the New Zealand economy. They do help to avoid, they help to address the broader issues that the economy faces.
A couple of quick things. The number of truancy officers you announced, was it 82 you announced?
From memory, that sounds right.
82. One started. Why?
That's a question for the Minister of Education and the Ministry of Education. I know that the Minister of Education will be leaning heavily on the Ministry of Education.
She won't come on. We've asked her. She won't come on. So you've been Minister of Education. Why is one started out of 82?
Well, Minister of Education, you don't go out and recruit these people yourself. You rely on the agencies responsible to do that. And I'd certainly be expecting the Minister of Education to be leaning heavily on them to make sure they're making progress. Do
you worry about the record rent New Zealanders are paying?
Rent has certainly been an area of cost pressure for New Zealand households. Yes, I think we should acknowledge that costs have gone up for accommodation, not just for renters, but for mortgage holders as well.
What's the median rent paid in this country these days?
That is, I haven't got the number in front of me, and I don't want to pick it out of thin air and get it wrong, Mike. But it's certainly been going up.
Why?
Well, interest rates are going up, so that, for landlords, that has an impact on their costs. Overall, we've seen an inflation in rent, although I think we've come off from memory, we've come off the peak in terms of...
We haven't actually. We've just got... The numbers came out this morning. It's gone up again.
Well, it's gone up again, but I don't think it's... Well, look, I haven't seen the numbers, so I don't want to comment on that, but...
It's $600 a week. It's never been higher.
The more recent numbers I saw suggested that while they're not increasing at the same rate they were before. But I haven't seen this morning's numbers, so I won't make a formal judgment on those.
Appreciate your time as always. Chris Hipkins, the Prime Minister.